Actually, my full name is Susan Eileen Mary O'Halloran. My parents weren't taking any chances, just in case there was any doubt as to my ethnicity. And I was born on the south side of Chicago. Any Chicagoans? A few out there? Yeah, yay Chicago, yay St. Louis, yay all of us. The south side of Chicago, when I grew up in the 50s and 60s, was a melting pot. We all sat in our own separate pots and melted. The neighborhood I was born into was 99.9% Irish. Not only were all the folks from Ireland, they were from the same county in Ireland, County Kerry. So my neighborhood was called the Kerry Patch. And then the city began to develop the outskirts of the south side of Chicago. And my parents decided we were going to move to this new development, this new neighborhood, which meant people were going to come from all over the city to move into this new area, which meant it was going to be a mixed neighborhood. St. Thomas More was only going to be 95% Irish. And my Irish grandparents were truly upset because you know that mixed neighborhoods can lead to mixed marriages. And sure enough, in high school, didn't I go and date Jim Morpinski, a Polish boy? And my grandparents couldn't believe when my dad said I could go. This was interracial dating back then. So we were quite clannish about our ethnicity, but even more so about our religion, which in Chicago meant geography. When I was growing up, I was told right away that the folks you did not trust were the North Siders. And I know you've got your parts of the city in St. Louis too, right? We get very much about our city, our parts of cities. Now some of you know about the rivalry between the South Side Chicago White Sox and the North Side Chicago Cubs. Yeah. But my grandparents' prejudices went way beyond baseball. They told me that all those people up on the North Side were atheists. Yes, atheists. Because you see, my grandma said they have Lutheran, Episcopalian, Methodist, and God knows what other kind of churches up there. And since, according to my grandparents, if you were not Catholic, you were going to hell anyway, they might as well all be atheists. So sure enough, as soon as I got old enough to move off to college, you know where I went. The North Side, right? I hightailed it to the North Side, that great atheist wasteland. And pretty soon I started meeting some of these other Christians I had heard about. And I found out that Catholicism is a very particular kind of Christianity, because I would get talking about being raised Catholic, and my other Christian friends would look at me and be like, "We have no idea what you are talking about." Like the fact that we pray to saints. They would say, "Why would anyone pray to a saint instead of directly to God?" And I'd say, "Because there's middle management everywhere." Now, pretty soon, my grandparents just were forced to come live with us as they got older. But the whole time they were in St. Thomas More Parish, they talked about the old neighborhood. You see, that's really an Irish thing. He had been a good old fella. That had been a good old car. Someday we'll go back to Ireland, the old country. In fact, I have a favorite Irish joke. Now, most ethnic humor is put down humor, and I don't like it. But being 100% Irish, I hear this joke is quite affectionate and quite true. And maybe you've heard it. It goes like this. How many Irish does it take to change a light bulb? Answer, 10. 1 to change the light bulb, and 9 to sing songs about how great the old light bulb was. One day I was doing work for the Archdiocese of Chicago, the Catholic schools in Chicago, and I overheard this nun talking about the good old parish hall. They had gotten a new community center. And about the good old parish priest that used to serve there. And I shouted across her, "You have got to be Irish." And her name was Sister Marie McKenna. Now, Sister Marie is a nun in the religious order called Sisters of the Living Word. And I always thought that would be a great name for us female storytellers, wouldn't it? Sisters of the Living Word. Well, after this archdiocese job was over, Sister Marie called me up and asked me if I would come and tell stories, give a keynote kind of speech at her religious order's annual conference. And about 2 weeks before this gig, this conference happened, she called me up and said, "Oh, you are not going to believe this. It's such an Irish thing." As I said, we had gotten friendly. We had shared things about our Irish heritage. I had been to Ireland a couple times by then. She had been back many times. She had a lot of family there. She also did reconciliation work between Catholics and Protestants in Northern Ireland. And when she and I would say to each other, "It's an Irish thing," what we meant is, let's get together and laugh about the idiosyncrasies in our culture. Because I'll tell you, I can't say quite assuredly that Sister Marie McKenna and me, Susan Eileen, Mary O'Halloran, are quite proud of being Irish. But when you can get together with somebody you're on the same wavelength with and laugh about the contradictions in your culture that are in every culture, right? It kind of gives you a little insight into your background. She said, "It's an Irish thing. I found this letter. I want you to read it." And I said, "Okay." And I kind of settled in to hear it. She said, "No, I mean, I want you to see it. I want you to see it's a handwritten letter. I didn't get off the internet. Come to the conference early, read it, see if you want to use it." Well, I had had 14 years of Catholic education. I knew to do what a nun says. So I always come early to my gigs anyway, so I showed up early. No sooner I put my foot in that conference center, she handed me this letter. Her father had passed recently, and Marie had been going through her dad's keepsakes, sorting things out, and she found this cedar chest with old letters in it. And this was a letter from a cousin in Ireland to her dad. Marie's dad had grown up, was raised in Ireland, but then as a young man went to Canada and eventually the United States. And Marie had never seen this letter before. And she said, "Oh, it is so typical to things we heard growing up in our Irish Catholic families. I'm afraid it's filled with stereotypes, but it is hysterical. I about fell off the couch reading it when I discovered it. I know how you like to use humor when you talk about cultural clashes with your diversity stories and all. I thought maybe you could read it tonight, see if you want to use it." Well, I read it, and sure enough, I wanted to use it. And then I asked her permission if I might read that letter to you. Now, you should know that in it talks about Orangemen and turncoats, and that's referring to the British who had occupied Ireland for hundreds of years, okay? So here is the letter from Cousin Timothy to Marie's dad, Ireland, November 18th, 1948. Dear cousin, your welcome letter was received to me and your Aunt Bridget. I see you have gone to high places in America. I hope you'll not be putting on airs and forgetting your native land. God bless you. Thank you for the money you sent. We had 7 masses said for your dear old grandmother and grandfather. God rest their souls. Oh yes, your cousin, Hughie O'Toole, was hung in Londonderry last week. Oh, by the way, was hung in Londonderry last week for killing a policeman. May God rest his soul. And may God's curse be on Jimmy Rogers, the informer. God forgive me. We had a grand time at Paul Madoon's wake. He was an old blabbermouth, and it looked good to see him stretched out with his big mouth closed. He is better off dead. And he will burn till the damn place freezes over. He had too many friends among the Orangemen. God's cursed a lot of them. The priest called Mrs. O'Leary to give a donation to the church. She says, "My son sent me $10 for a permanent for my hair, and I'm not giving it up." Well, Father says, the Blessed Virgin never had a permanent. No, she says, nor Jesus Christ ever have a car. Like yours. Bless your heart, I almost forgot to tell you about your Uncle Danny. He took a pot shot at a turncoat from the back of the hedge, but he had too much of the drink in him and missed. God's curse on the dirty drink. Father O'Flaherty, who baptized you, is feeble-minded and sends his blessings. Nellie O'Brien, the brat you used to go to school with, has married an Englishman. God grant her no luck. Things look bright again, the fish are running well, and every police barracks in the county has burned to the ground. Thanks be to God. I hope this letter finds you in good health, and may God keep reminding you to keep sending the money. God take care of the lot of you and keep you from sudden death. Your devoted cousin, Timothy. So I read the letter that night, and the nuns had a good laugh, and Sister Marie was laughing all over again herself. But like I said, she was kind of embarrassed. She said, oh, my family, everything was about the troubles in Ireland. It'd be God bless everyone out of one side of their mouth and kill the dirty bums out of the other. And of course, I knew just what she meant, because it was the same in my family, curses and blessings within the same breath. And we started talking about me using the letter in the future. We were a little concerned about perpetuating those stereotypes of the fighting, drinking Irish. Those labels drive us mad. But I assured her that my audiences were the most intelligent, the most sophisticated, and that they would certainly understand that not all Irish thought that way, and that this was a particularly gruesome time of oppression and occupation. You understand that, right? And that the Irish certainly aren't the only culture that have had the time, from time to time, had this thought that God is on our side. So Sister took the letter back and promised she'd make me a copy. And she said, just think about all the wars that have been fought with that kind of thinking. I mean, when are we going to stop using our beliefs as weapons? And I said, forget about wars. How many times in my daily life do I get caught up in thinking my way's the only way, creating all these us and thems? Only probably a dozen times a day. And then I wanted to share with her a poem that I'd like to share with you. It inspires me whenever I start running at the mouth with my beliefs, thinking my truth is the only truth. It was written in Turkey, 13th century, by the Sufi mystic poet Rumi. It kind of inspires me whenever I think that, oh, I should be running the world. It reminds me that perhaps that job is better surrendered to more capable hands. The poem goes like this. Let us not be so sure of anything, and then miraculous beings will come running to help. Let us be helpless, dumbfounded, unable to say yes or no, and then a stretcher from grace will come and gather us up. Crazed, lying in a circle together, mute, we shall finally be saying with tremendous eloquence, lead us, oh please, lead us. And when we have surrendered to that beauty, and when we have totally surrendered to that beauty, we shall be a mighty kindness. Oh, I end with a little song I wrote a while ago, a little ditty my grandmother would call it. A cheerful little ditty. It goes like this. Well, I killed you when you killed me in the name of liberty. It went down in history, it's still the same today. People dying every day, is this the way it's sure to stay, or is there yet another way for people to be free? So I ask you here and now, do you know the where and how we could work the whole thing out? And finally be free, and finally be free, and finally be In fact, let's sing that beautiful word together, free. When I count 3, let's say free like we believe it, like with gusto, like we think we could actually live in harmony. In fact, feel free to harmonize when I count 3. And finally be 1, 2, 3, free. Thank you.